Why is it from? Oh, hey, good Monday. I didn't put Instagram on, I put it on picture, and I just took a picture of myself as I was turning Instagram on. All right, now we're going live. We're getting it all together. There we go.
There we go.
So, hey, it is Monday, which means it is time for If You Only Knew, and I am Carla Webb. Well, let me get this fixed over here again.
There we go. And I am Dr. Errin Weisman, the guest.
Yes, so I'm the host, Carla Webb, Christian life coach, and this is Dr. Errin Weisman. My guest today, we have already had such a fun chat before we even got started here today. So I think we're going to have a really great conversation that you're going to find extremely interesting and hopefully help you on your life journey as we go also. So first of all, let us know that you're here. Tell us hi. Sometimes the comments run a little bit behind.
Give us a thumbs up.
Give us a thumbs up. Hit share. Share it on your timeline. Invite some friends to come in and watch, because this is going to be a really good conversation today.
This is going to be the bomb.
And hey, Vicki. So, Dr. Weisman, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I am a Southern Indiana girl. We are going live from Boonville, and I am originally from Mount Vernon, Indiana, so I have made many the trip across to play volleyball, to run track, a lot of athletics. So I brought up a bunch of memories coming back to Boonville today. But I'm originally from Southern Indiana. I am a family medicine physician. My whole journey with that is long and complicated, but needless to say, I went from extremely burned out to now living a badass life. And coaching saved my life, and that's how we met. Was through a mutual friend, Susan Hyatt. She does great work for life coaches, and Carla and I met through her, and we instantly knew, being Southern Indiana gals, we need to unite powers. I specifically coach working moms and physician moms. But I think there's so many common threads between life coaching that I wanted to come on. I've been watching If You Only Knew, and I was like, man, I need to drive down there and have lunch with Carla and do this and just talk about my story. We were talking a little bit about faith before we got on here, and I was raised General Baptist. I went to Oakland City University.
Check. Both of these things.
Got a biology degree before I went on to medical school. But my faith journey has been, it's also been really complex and complicated, and it's not one that I feel like here in our area that we talk about it. But being emboldened to be a life coach and just stepping into my power of a woman, I'm really excited to bring that today and talk about how my faith life has changed, how I continue to struggle with points of faith, and that's okay. That's totally okay. And that's what it's supposed to be about.
That's part of the journey. So, so if we have people who are tuning in who have never watched an If You Only Knew before and aren't really familiar with me, or maybe you are a follower of Errin here and she's bringing you on to this, just a little bit of background as far as the whole idea as to where If You Only Knew came from is, as I said, I am a certified Christian life coach, and I deal mostly, I can help people in all kinds of different areas, but mostly I deal with women in particular who have come out of toxic relationships and help them to quit repeating those cycles of toxic relationships. And specifically, really, if we get really, really specific, women within the church who have been in toxic or abusive relationships, and they have been in those relationships and stayed in those relationships because they believe that's what God wanted for them, and that God hates divorce, and he does, but he does also hate abuse. And so when I got out of my 17-year abusive relationship, it was verbal, emotional, psychological, financial, spiritual, but I would say he didn't hit me. He didn't hit me, and he didn't cheat on me. And so those were the only biblical reasons that I felt I could get divorced. And every other type of abuse, I just had to endure.
Yeah.
And I just had to pray harder and be better and be submissive. Oh, we love that word in the church. We love to be a submissive wife. And so I had all of these conflicting thoughts and feelings depending on how, being raised in the church and what I believed to be true, but what I was hoping that God didn't want for me.
Yeah.
And so from that, If You Only Knew was born, and specifically from John 4:10, whenever he says to the woman at the well, Jesus says to the woman at the well, if you only knew who I am and the gift that God has for you, you would ask me for a drink of living water. And the woman at the well, she had been married 5 times. And the man she was living with at that time was not her husband. And I thought, if Jesus was saying to her, if you only knew who I am and the gift that I have for you, then maybe I need to search my heart and get to know him a little bit better and understand the gift that he had for me. And so that's where that came from.
Well, and I think too, like going back from both of our GB backgrounds, I mean, I grew up as like the Bible was unquestionable. My NIV was unquestionable. But as I did my undergrad degree and kept seeking, I realized the Bible, whatever version you use, is a human interpretation. And that so many times it's been changed over the last 219 years or whatever, whenever they had their Congress and decided what was going to be in and what was going to be out. And that, there's so many historical contexts that we don't understand from that age that are still pulled through, like you're talking about, like the submissive female. That was culturally appropriate then. It isn't any longer now because they didn't understand gender equality. They didn't understand that, guess what? Girls can be doctors too.
What?
And so I think that was a lot of my awakening, is beginning to question maybe what I was raised with, and to tease out what was human constraints that we've put into religion, and what are God restraints.
Well, and we have so many strong females in the Bible, and for some reason those get glossed over.
Or they got pulled out.
And it's like there were a lot of really strong females. They were not weak, meek and meager women.
Or they weren't written about. And we have to understand them from other texts. And so I think it's really important, if you're listening to us today, maybe I'm saying that the Bible's wrong sometimes. I'm not going to speak for Carla, but what I'm saying is that what you have always been told is truth. Maybe somebody else's truth.
Sometimes
it may not be yours.
You need to, a lot of times, especially whenever you are raised in one denomination your whole entire life, and then you start talking to other people and your world gets a little bit bigger, and you really have to investigate and understand and search for yourself why you believe what you believe. Is it because it's just the way you've always been taught, or have you discovered for yourself that it is the truth? And so that discovery session is very, very important, because each denomination comes with their own doctrine and their own dogma. And you have to and so really search out why you believe. Can you really answer why you believe what you believe? And so I want to talk to you about your faith journey. And so the question is, if you could go back and be your own best friend, what would you tell yourself? And I'm so glad that you chose, you said you wanted to talk about your relationship with Christ or with God, with your beliefs. And, we haven't had anybody do that yet. So I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, because I'll be honest, my relationship with God and my faith walk has been all over the place. And so I don't think that I got exposed to other faiths, other religions, until I went to medical school in Kansas City. Because like I said, I was raised in Southern Indiana. I went to college in Southern Indiana. And so it wasn't until I went out to Kansas City and I met these amazing other classmates, other medical students who were Jewish, who were Hindu, who were Muslim, who didn't believe in God. And they had answers that I had never really processed. You know, I had always pushed it away like, well, that's what you're just supposed to do. Like that's what God says and that's enough. So it wasn't until medical school that I realized like there are some really intelligent and profound people who have different answers. And does that make them wrong? Does that make me wrong? Does that make like this whole religion, faith wrong? And so that's when I really started processing through. And then through medical school, I mean, they describe it like drinking out of a fire hydrant. You just try to get what you can and you just try to keep upright. And so it was really intense because I went from being valedictorian to having like a 3.95 in college. Like I was always top of the class. And I got introduced into medical school. And girl, I was lucky to be middle of the class. I mean,
you're like, what has happened here?
And it wasn't just me, it was everybody. Like the intensity grew because not only were you learning for education, but you were learning to save lives. Like this is important shit. You guys have to know your stuff as future doctors. So there was a different pressure put on it. And I remember, you know, my family was like, you got to find a church. You got to find a church. You got to find a church in Kansas City. And so I was like, okay, you know, whatever. There's like hundreds of churches in Kansas City. I'm going to start. So I would kind of go with some friends to places that they had found. And I ended up finding a really beautiful church in Independence, Missouri. But, you know, that was some of the hardest and darkest times in my life. I was away from home for the first time. I was under so much pressure. And through that came up a lot of like me in the middle of the night being like, God, why? Like, what is going on with this? And I heard nothing. And I got no response. Like, I was like waiting for the clouds to part and like to get my Moses answers. And that's when I started doing some other things, which I wouldn't have done if I was in Southern Indiana. I started going to yoga class. I started hanging out with friends that maybe would have been, you know, wrong if I was at home. And I realized that the definition that I had put on God was very much in a box. And God does not live in boxes. God is bigger than that. And so what I would tell myself if I was my own best friend, I would maybe go back to my days at OCU and just say, be more open, be more tolerant, because you don't know when your time's going to come. And maybe your answers are not in the New Testament. Maybe your answers are sitting with somebody in a yoga class and just their presence. Or maybe it's going to be sitting in the study rooms and just within another human spirit that you experience the peace and the joy of God. And knowing that our God is so big, the God of the universe, the God of all religions, that you're not going to understand all the answers. And that's okay. I also learned at that time, and what I would tell myself as a best friend is like, it's okay if you don't get up and go to 9 a.m. Church service on Sunday, if you need to sleep and rest for your big upcoming week. You need to take care of yourself. God is not going to smite you for you taking care of yourself, and you should have no guilt about that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was raised that we went to church every time the doors were open. And that was Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and every other time in between. And, you know, as an adult and someone that is the head of, you know, my own household and having children, you know, that is something that I've had to deal with also is, you know, if I make the executive decision for my family that we are all just really exhausted and we're not going to be at the 9 o'clock service, are we all going to hell? You know, whereas like our life going to run off the tracks. And then, you know, can we have our quiet time, our church time at home? Can we gather around in the living room and have a devotion together as a family? Or does it mean we have to get up and go to the church building? And I totally believe in, I believe that we are meant for relationship. And I believe that the local church is vital and important to our local community and to our family. But I also believe that you get to make some executive decisions for you and your family also to say, you know what, today we need some rest, and we need to come together as a family. And I think that's been a big transition for me.
Well,
as an
I think
adult.
you too, like you individually, we all have to process. Is it more spiritual to meet God in your living room or by the stained glass window at church? And this was something actually, so me and my husband eloped in Hawaii. So we got married on an extinct volcano. And one of the comments that was made by our family members was, I thought you believed more, Errin, than that, not getting married in a church. And, processing through that, I had to realize, I was like, is my marriage any less valid not being in a church, being compared to what I consider the most beautiful places in the world? I don't think so.
Well, I got married in Vegas.
Yeah. So I think that's something that each of us has to be like, can God only be in this one place?
Yeah.
Can he only be honored in this one way? Can he only hear us if we say a certain amount of words? Are we only saved if we do it this particular way? Those are big questions. And I know that that's what I've processed through.
Well, and the reason that we went to Vegas to get married is because the church we wanted to get married in wouldn't marry us. And I won't get into all that, and I won't call out any particular religion. But it was important to us to get married, in the church, and the church that my husband wanted to get married in, and that was important to him, wouldn't allow us to get married for reasons.
Yep.
And so
I think then you have
to,
because now I look at it like retrospectively from my marriage, and I'm like, we're still married, we still got kids, like we're good. Like, did that really, was there a sanctification that we missed on all of that? And I think that's when you there's some religious folks, they need to get off their damn high horse, come down to the level of all the rest of us and be like, is this of God? Or is this me placing some mindset work on other people? Because being life coaches, we know that 90% of how our life manifests outside of us is because of what we think. Now, granted, as a physician, I have seen miracles. I've seen there are times when people should have died, things should have happened, and they did not. And I can't explain that. So I know that there's more to this world than just the physical. But I think there's so much of it that people don't realize, like, hey, you got to clean up your own headspace. That is important.
The Bible, it's biblical. The Bible tells us that we have to capture our own thoughts. We have to take our thoughts captive. And that, in modern terms, is called thought work, is called mindset. But that goes all the way back to the Bible of taking your thoughts captive, because our thoughts become our words, and our words become our actions.
And our reality.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so we have to be very careful about that. So I don't know if we've bled into the second question or not, but hey, the second question is, what is a truth that God has revealed to you about yourself?
Okay, so even as a little child, 8, 9, 10, teen years, I have always been a leader. I've always been a very strong leader. I've always been one that is very willing to stand up and to talk and to lead. And for me, growing up in, like we've talked about, like church life, that was leading Bible studies. That was getting up and doing like youth services. That was like doing like dramas. In school, that was being part of like student council and organizing homecoming. And then as I transitioned into college, that was like being the president of biology club and like all of this stuff. And, as a kid and in my GB background, I thought either to continue that going, I was going to have to marry a pastor. Like that, women in ministry was not going to happen. And the more I looked at it, I was like, even as a young kid, I was like, hell no. I'm going to be who I am, not because of who my husband is. And so I'm so glad I had that in me. So I think that's honestly why I pursued a career in medicine, because I knew, just like ministers or healers, that healing was a part of my soul, and that I could be a true influential leader in that. And so I think what God showed to me is like, Errin, I place this desire in your heart. It is holy. Do not let what other people constraint on you to go against what I have implanted in you. You are a healer, you are a leader, You are a strong woman. Doesn't matter if you have an XX or an XY chromosome. You are who I made you to be. You need to stand in that. And so I think that's been part of me speaking out in the medical community about burnout, about gender inequality. Even in Southern Indiana, guys, as a female physician, I am treated differently than my male colleagues. You know, luckily I'm primarily English speaking and my skin is white, but my brown and black colleagues who English is maybe their second language, or maybe it's not even, you know, they have even more inequality in our area and in our nation than what I deal with. But I know that God planted this within me to speak up for those who can't. Mm-hmm. And, you know, initially I thought that was maybe going to be like a missionary going overseas with my Jeep and my like medical pack, and I was going to take care of people. But now I realize, no, that's me standing up in the US, speaking to other women and saying, no, this is not right. You are not less. Mm-hmm. And let me show you, because my primary message is you are not alone. And if I can do it, you can do it.
You know, we were having this conversation before we went live, and in my early 20s, I was a part of a discipleship program at my church, and this lady that was older than I, she was, you know, would have been my mother's age, was assigned to disciple me, and she didn't want to because she thought I was like too strong-willed and knowledgeable and things like that, and she didn't want to mentor me. She didn't want to disciple me. And she reluctantly did, and we went ahead with it. But my whole entire life, I have always felt like I had a calling on my life, and I felt like I was called into ministry, and I felt a call to speak, and to me, that was preaching mm-hmm. or evangelizing. But in my denomination, our denomination that we grew up in, there aren't female pastors, there aren't female ministers, and so then it was like, well, I feel like I've been called into ministry. I feel like I've been called to preach. And she said, well, I don't believe that women are called to preach. I don't believe mm-hmm. women are called to be ministers and pastors. And I said, well, then what does that mean for me? What does that mean for me? If I feel like this is what I've been called to do, then what am I supposed to do with that? Are you saying that my calling isn't real?
Doesn't it make you feel like, well, then why did God put this in me?
Yeah.
Like, is he wrong?
Yes. And so then I was like, well, what are my options then? Well, I can be a worship leader. And I wasn't even, when I went on staff at a church, I wasn't allowed to be called the worship pastor. I wasn't allowed to be called the worship minister. I could be called the music director, the worship leader, but I could not have the word minister or pastor in my title because women weren't allowed to be in that place of
you know,
leadership.
And I think that's so amazing, because if we really like take it down to the biological, like if I took a male brain out of a cadaver and a female brain, it would be nothing. So essentially what they're saying is, because I have a vagina and you have a penis, you are higher. And see, when you break it down under that argument, does it not sound ridiculous? I mean, because it's true.
I am so
because it's true.
I am so loving you. Now, for those of you who are in like shock right now, take a breath.
That's right, Grandma. I said sex.
It's gonna be okay. You're gonna be fine. You will survive. You will get through this. If you feel like you need to repent, do what you feel like you need to do. But this is just real.
The medical terms.
This is just real.
That is truth, guys. Like, you know, and I hate when the argument goes back to the whole like Adam and Eve was the bad person, and that's why they got kicked out. I'm like, really? At this day and age, if you can't see that as a story, and you know, again, I think you need to really go back to the historical context of it all and be like, why are we holding down women? Really? Why are we doing that? Why are we justifying through our faith? You know, because if I can be a woman physician, why can't you be a woman pastor? Who has more power? I mean, I think that as a physician, I kind of have a lot of power. I mean, not that I want to kill anybody, but I know about 100,000 ways to do it.
But she could.
And so, I mean, why would we not want to trust women with faith and salvation and love and grace? Because honestly, I think at times, maybe women do that a little better.
And you know what I love about this is that this is just a real honest conversation. And, God can handle our tough questions. He can handle, a few curse words here and there when we're, having that conversation or expressing ourselves, and to not limit yourself to who you have conversations with. It is really good to have conversations with people who are outside of your scope, of your bubble, to challenge you and to challenge what you believe and the way that you think. And you know what? You may come full circle and come back to like, well, this is why I believe, this is what I believe, and I still believe this. I still believe this way. But you now have challenged yourself and your beliefs and have gone back to really know within yourself why you believe what you believe. So it's not about, having some tough conversations with people outside of your faith, outside of your gender, outside of your denomination. It's not to, it's not, you may not change the way that you believe, but at least you're challenged to really have some introspection and to challenge yourself. Why do you believe what you believe?
Well, and I look at it too, that if by asking these questions and having the discussion are chipping away at your faith, it's not a strong faith. And so I look at it too, and I tell people, I've been going through a major faith deconstruction. And I alluded to when you do home improvements on your house. Like, you got your nice little house, you're really excited about it, but at some point things needed to change. Either you needed to, you hated the shag carpet and it was time to pull that out, or your family grew, or maybe there was some damage from a storm and you had to fix it. Well, first you have to tear that stuff down. You have to physically remove it out, but then comes the fun part of replacing it back in. And then loving that part. My faith life, when I accepted Christ at Camp Rose Inn as an 8-year-old, another TV reference. My faith house was like a little dollhouse compared to my faith life now as a almost middle-aged woman who has had all those life experiences. And guys, it's about modifying that house. Because if you stay with that little Barbie house for your entire life, you're missing out so much. And it was because I asked questions. It was because I have Muslim friends and I've actually been in a mosque. It's because I went to yoga and understood the mind-body connection. It's because I became a physician and realized that people don't get sick because of sins. They get sick because of the physical manifestations, like disease. You don't get sick or you don't have a stroke because you decided you weren't going to believe in God anymore. No, that's of this world. It's what happens when a little plaque flicks off your heart and goes to your brain. And so when we stop blaming and we start really getting in there and you start tearing down those walls of your faith house and then you build them back up again, you have something better. Yeah, it hurts in the process. It costs money, or, you have to go through all of that. You may lose friends or family members, but for you and your house, think how much better it'll be.
Well, my friend and mentor, Angie Umfrey, she put it well. She said, you have to deconstruct to reconstruct. You have to break it down and deconstruct and reconstruct.
And just when we do, sometimes when you drive past the neighborhood and you see this house that they're working on, and then it looks totally different than what it was, it's still beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's still what that person needs. And I think so many times that's where we get caught up, is we're making judgments about other people when we just need to take care of our own shit.
Take care of your own, clean your own house. Well, on that note, we're going to end it there for today. This has been a great conversation. I know for some of you, this has pushed a few buttons. I know this has pushed you out of your comfort zone, and that's okay. it's okay. And just
tell us about it.
Tell us about it.
I would love to hear. I would love to hear. And
that's
have
what tough conversations are about. So that's what we're. Speaking of which, so how can, if people are interested in having a little chit chat with you, Errin, how can they get in contact with you?
Okay. Well, like I said, I am all over social media. You know, my primary group are working moms, physician moms, but I'm more than happy to talk to anybody and everybody. And yes, I bring class and sass all in the same class. So you can find me at Truth Prescriptions, just Google it, or it's truthrxs.com. That's my website. If you love podcasts, which I hope you do, because they're a really great source of information and to hear new ideas and to hear maybe things that people are talking about that you have thought in your head but never put out into the world. My podcast is called Dr. Me First, and it is specifically for female physicians, but I think anybody could sit and listen to it and get some real amazing pearls out of it. It's where I sit down with another female physician and we just talk about life. We talk about practice. We talk about things that are inspiring us. And we also talk about how we need to doctor ourselves first. And I think this applies not just to doctors, but to any moms. Your cup is empty unless you refill it. And so those are important conversations that I'm having there. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. My email address is all over the place. And I just want to put a plug there. I'm not bashing the GB religion. Guys, that's what got me to where I'm at. I'm just saying that at some point, you've got to hop off the back of others and start realizing what is true to you. And that's why I named my company Truth Prescriptions. One, because I love writing prescriptions, but two, that I realize that truth comes from within.
Amen. Amen. And so that's how you can get a hold of Errin. If you'd like to get a hold of me and have a conversation, you can.
If you want me to come back, let us know.
Yes, we can have more conversations. You can hit the book now on my Facebook page, and you can schedule a 30-minute free consultation with me, and we can have a conversation as to where you are in your life, where you are on your spiritual journey, where you are in your relationships, and to see whether relationship coaching and spiritual coaching is right for you. And if it is, then great, we'll move forward. And if it's not, then
keep listening.
Keep listening, and I will pray for you and send you off with a blessing. And that's what it's all about. We are just on a journey, each one of us putting one foot in front of the other, doing the best we can with at that time and place where we are. And when we know better, then we grow and we do better. So this is your episode of If You Only Knew today.
If you only knew before tuning in.
If I had known. So thank you so much. Know that God loves you. Know that we love you, and have a great day. See you guys.